Hi, my name is Mike, and I'm here to read a comic, and today's comic is Supergirl, issue number 6, dated August 1973. And this is an issue I really enjoyed. I thought it was fun to read. I also got the impression, based on the effort put in the stories. There are two of them. And also by the letters page, is that editorial cared about this comic. They really wanted this comic to succeed. They had a vision for it, and I'll talk about it when I get into the letters. But this wasn't really treated like a hack effort. They really did care about Supergirl, and that's something that actually ran through the character when the character was in, I think, Venture Comics, because her 1960s adventures, I should say, while they were seemingly bland as hell stories, maybe to us guys, but to the young female readers at the time, they really did care about those stories. And I can kind of see that effort maybe being replicated here. I think in the 1960s, I guess I'll talk about that era a little later on. The connection that the comic made with the young female readers, the young girls who were reading it at the time, may have been somewhat accidental. But there seems to be a bit more purpose here in these 1970s stories. The comic wasn't successful. I think it ran maybe 10 issues, so it probably ran maybe a year or so. But nevertheless, this is a fun story. And there's a second B story, but it has nothing to do with Supergirl. It's the surprise guest star. And we'll take a look at the cover. The cover is definitely not an action cover. It's kind of closer to maybe a romance comic here. We see Supergirl. She's being kissed rather passionately by the seemingly gang member. It's kind of making it clear that this is a gang member, because there is a sign over the doorway in which a contemporarily dressed woman of the time is coming down, and it says Gang Lords Clubhouse. She is saying to Supergirl's stolen kisses will cost lives. Dun dun dun. Supergirl, from the look on her face, this is definitely not a consensual kiss here. You kind of have to be careful. You don't want to anger her. So we're told that this story is Supergirl sparks a deadly street war in the Gang Lords. I'm going to get into the story. So we take a look at the splash page. The splash page is really nothing special to speak of. In fact, I don't even know who the creators are of this comic. I'm assuming that there was an artist, I believe his name was Bob Oskner. It looks like he drew the cover, and he also did the interiors. Bob Oskner is kind of a George Tuska type artist, I would say. I mean, it's fine. The artwork's fine. I got the sense that a lot of the people who were working on Lois Lane were also working on this comic too. I think another artist who was probably working on this comic was probably Art Stoff, but I'm really not familiar with their work to say, without being told that it's them. So anyway, the splash cover, it does have the title In Love and War, and it's basically kind of a two-part splash page. It's split into two large panels. We see that there is some gang violence going on here in the streets. I sometimes will have trouble keeping track of these names because, honestly, does anyone really care? But the main one is Steve. Steve is leader of the Flaming Serpents. And then there's Rick. And Rick is the more important one. Rick is leader of the Hustlers. So these are the two rival gangs. This is kind of like, West Side Story with Tony and I kind of forgot the other guy's name. So anyway, I'm going to get into the story. We see that Rick here, leader of the Hustlers, he's being chased by members of the Flaming Serpents. And we can see they're quite angry. They kind of look like they just left the set of Billy Jack here. But the thing is that they're chasing Rick as they're kind of throwing these heavy objects at him, like bricks and bottles and so forth. However, in the second panel, we see Supergirl, and she flies out of the sewer because that's what young, beautiful women really want to be. And she flies out. She's using the manhole cover as kind of a shield for Rick here. And it's clear that Supergirl, one, she knows Rick, and she's clearly on Rick's side. So the thing is, she's there specifically to help Rick. It's not a situation where she's coming across this and she's kind of deciding, okay, I'll help this person based on this situation. She knows this guy, Rick. And we're told in the dialogue box, Supergirl discovers that nothing's fair in love and war when she rescues a teenager marked for death. Dun, dun, dun. Gonna turn the page. So rather than that being kind of a preview to the story, because I think that was DC's in-house style, or DC's preferred in-house style, where the splash page is sort of a retelling of the cover. They're kind of going past that, and they're going directly into the story. So this is sort of more of a Marvel type of transition here. We see Supergirl, she's using the manhole cover to stop the members of the Flaming Serpents here. So they're sort of out of the picture at this point. Supergirl, she grabs Rick and she flies right back into the sewers. She's like, Rick, I found this amazing smell. Oh, you are going to love it. But the thing is that Rick, even though Supergirl knows Rick doesn't know Supergirl. He's kind of surprised here that, he's getting this female attention, and he doesn't understand how she knew that the Flaming Serpents were going to go after him. There's a little bit of Shazam here where you have Earth's mightiest, like the TV show Shazam, where you have Earth's mightiest mortal in Shazam, and he's kind of like fixing problems for school truants and joyriders and so forth. However, Supergirl lets Rick know that, hey, you're kind of a famous guy here. You're kind of, you're the greatest street gang leader ever. And that's what I heard about you. And that's part of the reason why I'm kind of like taking a little bit of interest in what's going on with you. Rick disagrees with this assessment. He's saying, listen, I'm not the former leader of the Hustlers. I'm the current leader. I am the Hustlers. I am the embodiment of that gang. But the thing is that we're kind of in a new business now. So Supergirl's saying, listen, you guys aren't street fighters anymore, so I assumed you guys weren't part of a gang. So why is Steve bothering you? Rick is explaining kind of the street gang politics. Even though the Hustlers got out of the criminal activities, nevertheless they still exist as a unit. From Steve's point of view, he doesn't know what they're doing. They could be planning some type of power play. And they're also seen as kind of a threat by Steve and the other members of the Flaming Serpents, because they want to consolidate their power base. And it's really difficult to do when you have this other element that people view as a legitimate power on the street. And the Flaming Serpents, I guess they're feeling a little insecure because it's hard for them to say, listen to our edicts, and then, the people around them are saying, we can just go to the hustlers here. Or I don't think the hustlers are down for that. So that's what Rick is trying to impart to Supergirl, that there's kind of this street politics going on. But at that point, they're not talking about street politics anymore, because Supergirl drops Rick off at the YMCA, and his girlfriend is waiting for him there. And again, Rick is still a little confused. He's asking Loretta, hey, do you know what's going on? Rick wants to introduce Supergirl to his girlfriend, but, she says, listen, I have another appointment to take care of. Turn the page. So anyway, we actually are going down into the basement of the Y. And we see Supergirl, she's changing back into her civilian identity as Linda Danvers. I forgot what her Kryptonian name is right now. So now we see Linda. She's in the locker room in the basement. She's kind of changing, and she goes up to the main floor, and there she sees Rick and Loretta. Even though Supergirl does not know Rick formally, Linda Davins does. So we're learning here that basically the conflict that's going on, Linda learned from her friend Loretta, who is dating Rick. And she knows both of them. So clearly she's a bit clued in, and they obviously have no idea that Linda is Supergirl. So anyway, it looks like Linda's kind of pumping Rick for some answers here, kind of like gently questioning him so she can get a little bit more background. Linda is talking about, what Loretta has imparted to her about what the hustlers are doing now. Rick is kind of one of these guys, I'm not going to talk, I'm going to show. So the thing is, he says, hey, Linda, why don't you actually come with us and check it out? And then they go into this tenement that is currently being what's the word? Revitalized, so to speak. And the thing is, it's actually the former gang members themselves who are doing this work. I'm kind of hoping that these guys were trained to do this work, because while the gang members might want to turn a new leaf, nevertheless, safety codes, you don't want any type of building violations here. So this is what is happening with the hustlers. Apparently, the government had offered an opportunity for the hustlers to kind of change their ways, saying, "Listen, if you guys go legit, kind of like the Corleone family wanted to, Godfather 2, we'll provide you with some things to do, and we'll give you some funding. It's kind of like a government jobs program." Which is something I support. And we can see that it's kind of doing well here. I think there was some of this kind of community type drives, because there was an issue of housing back then, and as people were escaping, or white people I should say, were escaping to the suburbs, the urban areas became ignored, so to speak. And this is kind of a play on this, and I think there were some type of community groups who were kind of going around and trying to revitalize the neighborhood. This was played out a number of times. I think Amazing Adventures, when Neil Adams was doing the Inhumans, there was a story arc involving an individual who wanted to destroy the tenements. And it seems like what the Hustlers are doing, it is appreciated by the neighborhood. So, Rick is getting a lot of positive attention from, the neighborhood people here. And they feel this is a win-win. Rick is learning a trade. He's learning to be a responsible citizen, a good citizen, one that isn't involved in crime. And at the same time, he's kind of also learning a trade. And the city is getting all this great labor. And that's the case. That was not the case in New York when I grew up. When I grew up in New York, there was a ton of abandoned homes and buildings. And it turned out what was going on was that there were a lot of these building owners who did not want to, pay taxes to maintain their properties. And they were intentionally burning down their buildings. And the city was helping them, which is kind of crazy to think about, but yeah. So definitely the writer has a very idealized ideas about this. As I had mentioned, I don't know who the creative team is because I didn't look it up and it's not in the book. It looks like probably the same people who were doing Lois Lane at the time. I'm going to turn the page. Okay, so then we go back to the Flaming Serpents. And Flaming Serpents, they're still in the crime biz. They're still in the crime business. They do kind of see themselves as kind of revolutionaries because we see that there's a large poster of Emilia Zapata. I don't know too much about Zapata. I know he did lead a successful rebellion against the Mexican government. There was a movie about him. It stars Marlon Brando. Back when Marlon Brando actually cared about acting. It's a pretty good movie, so I would recommend it. It's called Zapata. So anyway, I guess they didn't want to use Che Guevara at this time. Oh, there's also some pinups here. There's kind of this kind of girl kind of twerking here on the wall. I'm not quite sure what magazine they got that from. What was the one that had? I think Players. Players was the one that usually focused on women of color. So maybe they had an early copy of Players. We see that what's going on is that the building that they're occupying is kind of decrepit. It is falling apart. It looks like they don't really have much in terms of utilities because one of the members is cold here, so he's going to light a fireplace. And the leader is fine with this. And the thing is that they're having a meeting, but the problem is that one of their important members, Little Napoleon, is late. So Steve's kind of a little bit testy here at the moment because he's still waiting on Little Napoleon to show up. Then swooping down from the fireplace is Supergirl. And she's saying, "Don't you play with fire here." Again, she's doing these little Shazam things where, as powerful as she is, she's very concerned about these small little kid things. The gang members, they're a little surprised here, but they're not frightened by her. So they're willing to take her on. It's kind of like that situation in X-Men 122 where Storm is kind of visiting her old apartment where she grew up in. And at that point, it basically became a crack house. This is a few years before crack actually showed up on the streets. And she encountered a number of junkies in the apartment, and they weren't afraid of Storm. And So it's sort of that situation. Steve is again, he's standing up to Supergirl. He's the leader of the gang, so he kind of has to show some intestinal fortitude. And he's saying, there's no way there's going to be peace between us and the hustlers. And then little Napoleon shows up, and he's kind of like, bad talking Supergirl here. And Supergirl wants to talk about peace. She actually did use the word peace. Little Napoleon saying, "You tell her, General Ricky, used to be a fighter. And now he's gone soft in the head. He's joined the system." So the thing is, the hustlers, they're viewed as sellouts by the Flaming Serpents. So this is part of the reason, because again, they're very mistrustful. But then Supergirl is noticing that Steve does not like little Napoleon talking over him. And two is that they're starting to get tired and they're starting to yawn heavily. Supergirl notices that they're both everyone's kind of looking drowsy, and there's a bit of a smell here, kind of like that rotten egg smell. And Supergirl's noticing that it's coming from next door. Can turn the page. So Supergirl's wondering if there's some type of gas leak. And what she does is that she smashes through the wall rather than using the door, which you can set off a spark there. And what she notices is that it's been I had mentioned earlier, there's a lack of utilities in the Flaming Serpent's headquarters. So what little utilities that they do have, like gas and electricity, they're basically stealing it. So they kind of rigged up a system where they're kind of taking these utilities from some other building. But the thing is that they kind of jerry-rigged this, and it's not particularly safe. So right now, Supergirl is seeing that this unregulated work is kind of setting off something that could be quite deadly, because right now there's leaking gas. Supergirl, she uses her super breath to kind of clear out the room. So at least all that captured gas has been kind of dispersed. And then Supergirl, after that, uses her X-ray vision. It's kind of a little scary there. I don't know if she got all the gas. But now she uses the X-ray vision to kind of seal that little hole in the pipe, the gas pipe. So that danger has been averted. And it seems like the gang members recovered. And not only did they recover, what Supergirl did kind of earned their trust. So they're a bit more trusting with her. So when Supergirl came into the room wanting to talk about peace, these guys weren't hearing it. But after they saw Supergirl's goodwill toward them, and the fact that she kind of saved their lives, they're saying, listen, okay, we'll give it a chance. We'll give peace a chance. And Steve agrees to a meeting. Of course, he unilaterally decides that it's going to be tomorrow at 9 o'clock at the Y. I'm going to turn the page. So we go to the next day, or the next night. The Flaming Serpents, they're preparing to go to the Y for this meeting with the hustlers. But once again, little Napoleon is late. And again, this is a little thing you got to keep in the back of your head. But Steve is very impatient. He says, listen, I'm tired of this little run. He's always late. We're always waiting for him. F this guy. We'll just go. He doesn't really add much value anyway. So then we see that at the Y, Rick is already there. And he has his members of the Hustlers there. And Supergirl is there. Because, she knows all about, where the Y is, obviously. So the thing is that Rick is concerned that the serpents, the Flaming Serpents, They're not here yet. But Supergirl is saying, listen, I'll take a look for them because, hey, they might have gotten into trouble. Maybe they were police profiled or something. So the thing is, Supergirl flies off. She does encounter the flaming serpents coming to the meeting. So the thing is, Supergirl sees them. She says, hey, they're late, but other than being late, it's really not much of a problem. But then what happens, a problem does occur. Because as the flaming serpents are kind of turning the corner near this garage, this multi-level garage, a truck comes down on them. It crashed through the guard railing here. The flaming serpents, they're caught by surprise. They notice this very large, very heavy truck about to splatter them. However, in between is Supergirl, who is kind of like floating there, and she immediately grabs the truck just in time. So the flaming serpents once again are kind of indebted to Supergirl here. Going to turn the page. Now, Supergirl, she grabbed the truck in mid-flight, and she saved the flying serpents. She puts it down. Again, you know, the Kryptonians, they're very respectful of private property. They want to make sure that there are no damages here. They want to make sure that no insurance company is going to be bothered by any type of claim. And when Supergirl is placing the truck down, she notices she's hearing sounds from the cab of the truck. And she surmises that there is actually somebody in that truck. And when she opens the door here, Kong, who is a member of the Flaming Serpents, he is unconscious, and he comes out of the truck. So it was obviously he was leaning against the door. And when Supergirl opened the door, he came flopping out. Luckily, there's another fellow gang member who caught him before he hit the concrete. They're trying to figure out what happened. And then little Napoleon shows up. And little Napoleon is saying that both him and Kong were on their way to the clubhouse, but that someone had hit them from behind. So the thing is that they're thinking that it was the hustlers who were betraying them, excuse me, brownies, I mean gummies, and that means war. That you know, this you know, unwarranted, you know, speculation is enough for them to declare war on the hustlers, because they believe the hustlers were the ones who had knocked these guys out and tried to kill the others. Supergirl, she doesn't believe this, and she's calling Steve out. She's saying, listen, Steve, I've twice kind of like, you know, saved your ass from the fire. I think that entitles me to ask you for a favor. And the favor that she's asking Steve is to hold off on any actual revenge against the hustlers. Because she's saying, listen, we got to make sure what happened here. And, you know, you guys could be wrong about the hustlers. So the thing is that Steve here is actually kind of a fairly even-headed guy. He says yes. He says, listen, we're angry. We're going to prepare for war. However, you are Supergirl. You did help us, and you can crush our nuts very easily. So we're going to give you some time. We're going to give you a little bit of time to prove that the hustlers weren't behind this. I'm going to turn the page. So anyway, we are going back to the hustlers' headquarters. And obviously Rick and the other members of the hustlers, they're disputing this. They're saying, no, we didn't do this. We didn't do this. You got to believe us. However, Rick believes that it's probably one of the members of the Flaming Serpents gang. So what he's saying is that basically the Flaming Serpents, they have a traitor in their ranks. For whatever reason, they don't like these peace talks, or they're using it as a way of taking advantage of the situation so they can kind of maybe leapfrog into a position of leadership, or basically that they're just kind of warmongers. So Steve is holding firm to that. Supergirl, she doesn't have any proof, and these, and both sides seem somewhat plausible to her, but nevertheless, you can kind of tell she's slightly on the hustler side. Remember, she has an advantage. She wants to believe in the hustlers. She, as Linda Davin, she has a personal relationship with Rick. She's friends with Loretta. She's seen the good that the hustlers are doing. So she really wants to believe the hustler side. So even though she's supposedly supposed to investigate this, somewhat unbiased, she's a little biased. However, Supergirl's not the type that would change reality to fit her her notions. So if she does find evidence that Rick is guilty, she's going to throw him into the slammer. But right now, Rick is getting the benefit of the doubt. Then we see Loretta. And Loretta is, she's encountering Steve. So the thing is, obviously, there's still this meeting. So Steve is in the Y. No, Steve is at the Hustlers headquarters, or clubhouse, I should say. And he wants to follow through. He wants to find out the answers. So we have Loretta, the girlfriend of Rick, who runs the Hustlers, and we have Steve, who's the gang leader of the Flaming Serpents. And they're about to enter the office. And as they enter the office, we do see a recreation of what we see on the cover. It's a bit different because we see that it's Supergirl who is putting on the moves for Rick. And the thing is that obviously Rick told her things that she wanted to hear. And she's happy that Rick is kind of taking this approach. And we kind of see that both Steve and Loretta, they're coming across this kind of Three's Company misunderstanding, and they're immediately jumping to conclusions. Even though I should add that, that Rick actually has witnesses, because Rick is not the only member of the gang in his office. So anyway, for some reason, this sets both Steve and Loretta off. I can understand Loretta. I should say this is Latino gangs. These are two Latino gangs. They're drawn that way, and they're colored that way. And Loretta has to see this blonde white woman kind of that's coming on to his man, even though she's coming on in a way that's kind of like, oh, I appreciate you, I'm going to give you a little hug. I don't know why Steve is upset by this, unless he had eyes for Supergirl. If I said Wonder Woman, I meant to say Supergirl. I don't know why Steve is so upset about Supergirl hugging Rick, unless maybe he wanted Rick. So Steve sets the ultimatum to Rick. Your gang and mine, the schoolyard, in an hour, it's war. I'm going to turn the page. So at this point, war has been declared. There's going to be a street war. They're going to get they're going to get the music ready tonight. And we see that Loretta is running off because she's not concerned about the war. She's concerned about Supergirl hugging her boyfriend. Supergirl, she feels horrible because she went there to help. But right now things are worse. So Supergirl has entered the fray. Loretta's upset because Loretta thinks that she is cheating with Rick. And there's also a gang war going on. So things aren't going well for Supergirl at this point. But Supergirl's going to investigate. Now, Steve gave 1 hour notice that he was going to declare war. And Supergirl is treating that as like a hard timeout. So she feels that she has 60 minutes to kind of figure out what had happened with that truck. And Rick is a bit cynical here. So while Supergirl is flying off saying, listen, I'm going to try to figure out what happened with the truck, Rick is kind of given up at this point. He says, listen, there's no talking to those knuckleheads. They think, it's war. We're not in the gang business, but nevertheless, we're no pushovers either. And we're going to get our hard hats, and we're going to get our 2x4s, and we're going to prepare for war. So anyway, Supergirl, she flies to the garage rooftop, and she's looking over the evidence of how the truck had smashed the guard railing and so forth. And she's noticing some oil on the ground, but she's also noticing some footprints. So she's seeing these footprints, but the thing is, she doesn't know whether it's a man or a child because they're so small. Now, remember, there was one character called Little Napoleon, so got to keep that in mind. And the thing right now, Supergirl thinks that either that whoever did this took their kid with them. Kind of like, this is like a criminal bring your kid to work. So whoever was trying to murk Kong and the other members of the Flaming Serpents, this person clearly has a kid, wants to show him this is how gang politics works. But the thing is, right now at this point, Supergirl doesn't have much evidence, but she's going to go to the schoolyard to stop the war. Turn the page. So then Supergirl flies off and she sees Loretta. Loretta's in her apartment. She knows that Rick is heading to the schoolyard. And she's relaying that information to Supergirl, that it's confirmed that, Rick is going to follow through on this war threat. And but the thing is that Loretta somehow knows that Steve did a turnabout. So Steve says, listen, you meet us at the schoolyard. But the thing is, Steve did not take the Flaming Serpents to the schoolyard. He took them to that building that the hustlers are working on as contractors, and they're smashing up the work. So this is more like mob gang violence here, where they would send in the thugs to destroy the property. And the thing is that the Flaming Serpents, they don't really care about the actual danger that they're causing, because apparently they're so focused on destroying the building that they're actually kind of destroying some of the infrastructure that's keeping it up. Supergirl's pointing it out that if you keep doing this whole building's going to pancake and collapse. But it turns out Steve doesn't care about that. He's like, let it fall. It's very similar to, again, when I mentioned Amazing Adventures. I think it was issue number 9 or 11, where it was, I think, 8, where, the guy was destroying the buildings and he didn't care. So anyway, Rick, after going to the schoolyard and not seeing Steve or the Flaming Serpents, he goes back to the building. I think somehow Loretta probably contacted him. Rick is furious because they're destroying his work. They're destroying all that beautiful non-union work. Steve, he grabs a sledgehammer, and he's about to flatten Rick. However, just as he's about to bring it down, Supergirl uses her heat vision and melts the sledgehammer into slab. Turn the page. into hot taffy, I should say. Now, Rick here, he grabs one of the bags of cement here, and he throws it at Steve. But the thing is, Steve ducks, and it just hits the wall. So Steve is kind of happy here because he's seeing Rick kind of destroying his own work. Supergirl tried to reach for the bag of cement, which is quite heavy, but she was just unable to do it. But the thing is, it turns out that one blow to the wall was enough to kind of ruin the framing of the building. So the building is in collapse at this point. And Supergirl has to save the building from collapsing because all these guys are in it. And Supergirl, she says she has one chance to save the building. What she does is she gets some of the lumber that is that's being stockpiled at the work site, and she takes the lumber and she flies off with it. Gonna turn the page. And Supergirl uses the planks of lumber to fortify the building here. So the building is no longer in collapse. But she's still saying she still has to stop the war in the building. So she stopped the building from collapsing, but she knew that there was just this war going on that was just gonna undo everything. The two gangs, they're duking it out. They're using their fists. They're not taking it out on the building. They're taking it out on themselves. Supergirl sees two rolls of insulation. And she uses the installation to trap the gang members. So first she rolls the installation pads out, and it knocks over the members of the gang, both the Hustlers and the Flaming Serpents. I'm gonna turn the page. And then she's able to roll that tubing of insulation back to her, with the gang members trapped in it. And I'm sure that these guys are getting a lungful of asbestos at this moment. The gang members, they're kind of making excuses. They kind of realize that there's someone in the room who can kick all their asses. And I think Steve's saying, Ricky's gang tried to kill me with that truck, and you're still siding with him, Supergirl? Supergirl says, no, only 2 people tried to kill you, just 2. Steve, a man, and someone with feet so small, at first I thought it was a boy. But it wasn't. It was a very short man, a very short and unattractive man. So short that you call him Little Napoleon. So Little Napoleon has been kind of found out here. He denies it, of course. Supergirl takes him out of that roll of asbestos here, and then kind of just slams him right on the ass, or on his back. So Little Napoleon might be on a little wheelchair because of Supergirl. And the thing is, what she did, she flipped him over to show that Little Napoleon had the oil on the bottoms of his shoe. And that oil that Supergirl had seen earlier kind of matched, his feet size. Gonna turn the page. The Supergirl wants answers. She kind of is guessing, but she doesn't really know. It turns out that Little Napoleon was just a power-hungry guy. He didn't want peace. He wanted to be a wartime consigliere. So he wanted that role that Michael Corleone demanded, and so he figured that since his own leader Steve was open to peace talks, that maybe he should get rid of Steve, and then he can become the leader, or at least he can try to manipulate the leader into continuing the war. Supergirl brings up the peace talks because now it's known that the Hustlers, they were acting in good faith. The Flaming Serpents, there was a misunderstanding, and it's been cleared up. And it turns out the two are kind of are going into peace talks here. and it looks like the serpents, they might have been looking for inspiration from the Hustlers, because the way Steve is talking, he's saying, "Listen, let me show you what we're building." So it looks like that when the Hustlers got out of being actively in a gang criminally, it looks like the Flaming Serpents were also trying to do that pivot. And so it looks like there's kind of like some understanding between the two. Loretta shows up, kind of making it clear, Rick is making it clear that I only have eyes for you. So the thing is, Supergirl flies off. Now, she is taking one member with her, and that's Little Napoleon, because Little Napoleon was the guy who started all the problems. Supergirl, she has a lot of faith in Rick and Loretta. She sees them as a couple, and then, hey, when you get married, kind of let me know. Now, that's going to be a little awkward because Linda Davins is probably going to get an invitation first, because they actually kind of know Linda a bit better. Now, Little Napoleon, he's being flown off by Supergirl. He doesn't know his fate. He asks, "What of me, Supergirl? Gonna dump me in the river?" Supergirl says, "I'm gonna take you where you can get some professional guidance and learn that love, the greatest general of all." That love is the greatest general of all. And that's our story. I thought it was fun. There was some contemporary things here. I guess if I bought this comic, I would have been happy with it as a 6-year-old. Okay, so the issue that I'm reading doesn't have ads. The person cut those out. So I'm going to look at the letters page. Super female. The first letter is from Greg. He's very excited. He's a big fan of Supergirl. Again, like I said, editorial did put effort into this comic, even though it wasn't successful. He likes the development of Supergirl, that they're developing her personality, and these just aren't like kind of transactional stories where something bad goes on and Supergirl gets involved because she doesn't like bad stuff, and then everything's solved at the end. The stories, they're trying to sort of, I guess, marvelize them, in that they're creating consequences and reasons that you should care about these stories. So anyway, Greg likes that. And Greg gets a big answer back. Their editorial is answering in paragraphs. They're not just giving one sentence things. Editorial is saying that Bob Osner had done the cover to Supergirl 3, and it was a really great job by him. And they're also discussing the story. They're discussing Supergirl's frame of mind. So again, they're kind of showing this is how Supergirl viewed the situation. And they're discussing the vision for the title, in that Supergirl's going to be emotionally involved in these stories. And if somebody is really happy, Supergirl's going to be the happiest person in the room. And if someone's really sad, Supergirl's going to be the saddest person in the room. And they're pointing out that Supergirl is going to be really invested in her stories. Okay, so the next letter is also kind, but this person, Mark, is asking some questions, saying that how come Supergirl is suddenly interested in Earthmen? Because it had been previously established, and Mark was a reader of Supergirl, because he knows a lot. It was previously established that she wasn't really into Earthmen, because to her, all Earth guys are incels. But then it turns out she is starting to like Earthmen. And we can see this on the cover with the unconsensual kiss, but nevertheless it's still a kiss. He also enjoys art staffs, drawings, and he enjoys Vince Coletta's inking. I kind of disagree with that. And then we see that I guess there was a second story. Yeah, The Phantom Heckler, saying that it had some flaws. You forgot a few things. The orphanage was called this, but it's really called that. And also Mark is closing with, are you going to start incorporating those fan drawings of what Supergirl's new outfit should be? They had a contest in Adventure Comics where the fans could kind of design a new outfit for Supergirl. And they did follow through. They had a judging. They picked, I think, the 5 best ones, with the promise that one of them would actually appear in the comic. But I don't think they had done that just yet. It was in issue number 407. Editorials explaining that basically Supergirl had become comfortable with Earthmen, and she lowered her standards. So this is sort of the old jingle, lowered expectations. And Supergirl, she's accepting, hey, these guys are weak, they're incels, but they're guys. And I'm not ready to jump the fence yet. And they're also talking about the fact that Supergirl will lose her powers, like have these on again, off again issues with her powers. So they kind of want her to be used to Earthmen. And what they were saying going back to her being comfortable with Earthmen is that they point out that Superman never really had a life in Krypton. Remember he was put on the rocket as basically a newborn baby. So he never really truly lived on Krypton. This is different for Supergirl, because her city was uprooted by Brainiac 5, and she was a teenager when this happened. So the thing is that Supergirl has memories of living on Krypton, something Superman doesn't have. And she was old enough at that time to develop her own ideas about romance and so forth. So her standards are kind of different than Superman's. And Supergirl is just now accepting that she has to change her standards because she no longer lives in a Kryptonian society. So that's what they're saying here. The last one is a female reader, Roberta. And she's enjoying the comic. She's saying, listen, you kind of showing some real personality here. And the assistant editor, Alan Asherman, who is doing the answering, is kind of just saying, hey, thanks. This is why we're doing this. Going to turn the page. So I'm going to get into the second story, the B story. And it's a completely different character. It is Melba Manton. And she is an African-American character. She is an employee of, what do they call it? Not the Daily Planet. The conglomerate that Morgan Edge runs. She's one of the employees there. She's one of the top employees there. And this is one of her adventures. It's interesting that there was a group called the Flaming Serpents in the first story, because this story has a lot of Tropic Thunder in it, to the point where I kind of wonder whether Ben Stiller was reading this comic. But there's a lot of Tropic Thunder, and of course one of the main groups in that movie was Flaming Dragon.
This is Last Horseman. Who is this?
This is Flaming Dragon!
So anyway, we see a preview of the story. There's a limousine car, town car. It's being driven off the highway. It's smashing through the barriers, and underneath the barrier is a freight train that's just underneath. And we see the limo driver. He's very he's almost in a hypnotic state of concentration. It turns out that there are two individuals. One of them is Melba, and a blonde man here who are like kind of crying out for help. What are you doing? We're gonna get killed. And this is sort of like, telling us this is like the cliffhanger here. And we're told that this is the final cut. And once again, we're not given a creative team. Turn the page. So basically, the story opens in Metropolis Airport. The plane is just landing. And there's a conversation going on. The conversation is between a very famous actor and his managing agent. And what's going on, I guess, is similar to like with Speedman in Tropic Thunder. The kids weren't, dressing up like him anymore.
Let's face it, the kids aren't dressing up. Escort you for porn anymore.
And it seems like this actor, he wants to restart his career, reboot his career. And he's using this kind of this interview that he has scheduled with Melba Manton as a way of doing this. The agent's kind of maybe disagreeing with some of the tactics and the ideas. But nevertheless, they're both concerned about the actor's name is Rex. So both Rex and his manager is concerned about Rex's career. And the manager, Freddie, is like saying, listen, you need to be listening to me. And I know best, and I'll tell you which film to do, and it'll be a big smash, and your career will be, where it should be. But Rex is a little skeptical about this. I guess he's not very happy with Freddie's management here. So he's going to go ahead with the interview, with the idea that it's going to be this interview that will bootstart his career. And we see Melba. Melba is beautiful African-American woman here. I think they were trying to introduce more African-American characters. DC, when they did introduce a black character in the late 60s, early 70s, they almost gave him nothing to do. And I guess being in a B story is kind of doing something, but it's not doing anything in terms of kind of elevating the character. I know when they introduced Tyrock, I think in the span of like 6 months, he was on the cover 3 times. So they were really trying to push him, and Mike Grell was probably embarrassed as hell that they were doing that. But Melba outfit is kind of a little strange here. I guess it's contemporary for the time. There seems to be this weird red and white plaid thing going on that kind of looks like bondage gear. And she's wearing a green blouse, which is not good, and a tie. And she sees Rex Benton, and she recognizes him as the big star. Rex apparently had bandages on his face, one over his nose, his forehead, his chin. I think this is Rex's way of trying to stay incognito and not be recognized by his fans. It's interesting, the nose thing, because this came out in 1973, but in 1974 there was this great movie called Chinatown that it starred Jack Nicholson. And in it, his character, for about a third of the picture, has this huge bandage on his nose. But that movie hadn't come out yet. We see here that Melba actually does state Rex Benton's name out loud. The manager is concerned about this. The manager, Freddie, saying don't say his name too loud because his fans will kind of like mob him. However, Rex is not listening to that. He's very happy. He's happy to meet Melba, seeing how sexy she is, and gonna turn the page. So anyway, we get to see Rex and Melba. They're being very gracious to one another. You kind of get the feel that there is probably a little bit of romantic chemistry between the two, and Rex is kind of really putting on the flattery, telling her how beautiful she is. Now the thing is that Melba, she wants to know why Rex kind of chose her to have this big interview, because they're in Metropolis and they do have Clark Kent, they do have Lois Lane, but Rex specifically wanted Melba. He felt that he liked her work and that she gave off a good vibe, and this is someone that he wanted to be associated with. So to a degree, he's kind of using his white privilege to sort of help out someone who might not have gotten this assignment. Because if this big star comes into Metropolis, management, they're probably thinking, okay, we'll get Clark Kent, we'll get Lois Lane. And Rex was like, no, I want to talk to Melba. So we have that going. Now, the thing is that as Melba and Rex are going into the car, Freddie is staying behind. He's claiming that he has to kind of like, check the reservations. He has to do a few things. This is, no one had cell phones at this time. So presumably, Freddie, he's going to be in some type of bar in the airport, kind of making these calls. And the limo driver is there kind of holding the door open for Melba and Rex. Then a airport employee kind of overhears this conversation, and he kind of saying, listen, the place that you're looking to get reservations, it's been booked. There's a huge comic convention or something like that. However, Freddie isn't concerned about that. And one of the reasons why he's not concerned about Rex's, hotel reservations is that he's thinking to himself that Rex is not going to be alive to enjoy those reservations. So we get to see this is the double cross here. So then we see Rex and Melba. They're talking to each other. It turns out Rex is a huge fan of Melba, kind of looking at that sexy Holly Berry face of hers, and it's saying, "Man, that is some chocolate I would love to dive into." But the thing is, there's a lot of traffic, so they have a little time to talk. Melba is very charmed by Rex too. I'm gonna turn the page. Then suddenly there's a sudden acceleration by the driver, and they're driving very fast to the point where it's really bothering them, and it's clear that the driver is kind of making this traffic issue here, because he's endangering all these other cars. Now, the thing is that this is a luxury car that was designed to be for commercial use. So there's plexiglass that's between the passengers and the drivers. Now, the thing is, the plexiglass is so thick that Rex himself, he can't crack it, because he's using his fist and he's banging on the plexiglass to get the driver's attention. Melba is obviously concerned about the situation. She notices that Rex's banging on the plexiglass isn't helping, and she's also noticing that the driver is focused to such a degree that he almost seems like he's in a hypnotic state. So this is probably how Lady Di felt in her last drive. Then it turns out the driver he gets off on the highway, and he's kind of like in this rural area here that's away from everybody. However, the driver and his erratic driving had captured the attention of a patrol car. So the thing is that while Rex and Melba are seemingly kidnapped in this situation, they at least do have some assistance right behind them in terms of this patrol car. Now Rex might be okay being blonde and blue-eyed. Melba here might be a little nervous. She's not quite sure which one of these drivers she might not survive. She might not survive the limo driver. She might not survive that police officer. But they both notice that the car is suddenly slowing down. And it's slowing down on this overpass in which a freight train is going under. And it seems like Rex has an idea about what's going to happen. Turn the page. And Rex's worst fears come true. The car does slow down, but it also makes a sharp turn, and it smashes into the guard railing. And it's basically running off the bridge or the overpass. Steve and Melba, they're holding hands here. I say Steve, I meant Rex. Rex and Melba, they're holding hands here. Rex is probably thinking, hey, can I get a little action here? But what happens is that as the car goes down, it lands on a particular car of the freight train. And apparently there's some type of trap door here. So the boxcar that they thought they were going to crash in actually softened their landing, and then a trap door elevated them down to trap them in the boxcar. So right now, it turns out this is kind of an elaborate James Bond kind of plot here. And both Melba and Rex are, they're thinking out loud, they're talking to each other. They figured that this was a setup, that this was something that was specifically planned. Can turn the page. So then what happens is the driver comes out, and he pulls a gun on both Rex and Melba. They're still in the back seat. And the limo driver is giving up the plan. Basically, this is where it starts to become Tropic Thunder, is that they're going to kidnap Rex for $10 million. And the driver's saying, listen, I don't want to hurt you, but I need you to get out of that limo, and he's armed. Now, Rex and Melba, or I should say Melba and Rex, because Melba's the star, they are very skeptical about this guy. They saw how he was driving. They saw how ruthless he was on the road. This guy has a gun. They figure he's just as ruthless. And Melba has a plan. And what she's thinking is that when Rex was pounding on the plexiglass, it loosened it enough that Melba feels that she can head dive into the plexiglass and get herself into the to the front seat of the car. Rex wants to discourage her. However, Melba just goes into action here. She flies head first. Rex might have been expecting Melba to be the human shield. And Rex is kind of surprised by this. But the thing is, Melba smashes through the plexiglass, and she's in the driver's seat. And the thing is that the driver, he's firing into the car. And at some point, he feels he's going to shoot. He's shooting like a stormtrooper here. And the thing is, from Melba's point of view, the car keys are still in the ignition. This is a fortunate event. I'm going to turn the page. Because Melba turns on the ignition and she goes forward. Now, she doesn't have much room because they're in this box car. But nevertheless, Melba going forward, it scares the shit out of this driver. He drops the gun. He's jumping for his life. Melba's bluff worked here. Well, it wasn't a bluff because she actually did do it. She rammed into the guy. The driver, he's hurt here, and he's a little dazed. Rex is really impressed because Melba saved the day. Rex didn't do jack shit. And Rex was saying, I'm really happy I picked you to do this interview with. And he's talking about Melba being a co-star. So this guy's ahead of his time. He's going to do like an interracial action movie. And it turns out that what happened is that Freddie and Rex, they developed a new type of camera. And they felt that this new type of camera can kind of like change action films at the time. What was the big action film in the Poseidon Adventure? I think was the big action film around this time. So Rex and Freddie, they felt that this new camera would kind of revolutionize movie making, and they wanted Rex to be the first guy to use it, and he needed a test subject. So now we know why he didn't pick Clark or Lois, because he was saying, listen, of all these reporters, who's the one I can endanger the most and get into the least amount of legal trouble? And he picked the black chick. And so Rex is showing off the camera. Melba admits she fell for it. She thought this whole thing was real, largely because it was real. This guy was super reckless. But Melba is noticing something. If this whole thing was just an act to test out this brand new camera, how come there are real bullet holes in the front windshield? Gonna turn the page. So Melba grabs the gun, picks it up, and she fires it at the tire, and it turns out there are real bullets. So the thing is that when Rex set this up with Freddie, Rex thought it was just going to be a kind of a simulation. But Rex is seeing, hold it, Freddie was actually using real bullets. He got a real killer and set this up. And Rex is realizing the consequences. So then what happened is that Freddie, he had left the airport. He had gone to the Metropolis Hilton. Remember, he wasn't expecting Rex to come back, so he only booked a room for himself. He's greeted with Melba here. He's surprised. At first, he's saying, "What are you doing? You survived," and then he's thinking, "Hey, can I have a little action?" And then what happened is that Melba kind of comes up with what happened. And it turns out that it was Freddie who had planned the kidnapping. So when the limo driver told Melba and Rex about the kidnapping, he was being honest, but he didn't say who was behind it. And it turned out it was Freddie, the business manager, who was behind it. Someone taps Freddie's sweaty body, gives him a little tap. Turns out to be Rex. Rex belts Freddie, knocks him unconscious. It turns out that that Freddie was carrying around incriminating evidence. So it's not simply, when they go to court, it's not simply going to be their word. They're going to have evidence that Freddie had planned this. And then we see the last panel. Rex is saying, "How can I ever repay you, Melba?" Melba's saying, "You already have, by giving me an exclusive eyewitness story." I'm sure Rex was probably thinking of something else. But nevertheless, hey, he'll have to take his ascot of love somewhere else. And then we're told that the next issue will be in July. And that's it. And that is my review of Supergirl number 6. And I hope to have more reviews up soon. Bye.